Welcome, my friends, to this special Independence Day edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge. Smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. I'm 76 and I can say with certainty that Camels has changed my life, and I'm sure that it can do the same for you. Listen, there are two kinds of people in the world today, those who've taken the Camels Challenge and those who haven't. Well, today is July 2nd, Independence Day. That's right. It was on this day that the Continental Congress declared its freedom from Great Britain when it voted to approve a resolution submitted by Delegate Richard Henry Lee of Virginia, declaring, quote, these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, and that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. John Adams thought that July 2nd would be marked as a national holiday for generations to come. July 2nd, quote, he said, will be the most memorable epoch in history of America. I am apt to believe that it would be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parades, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other from this time forward and forevermore. After taking this momentous vote, it was sent to the printer. So what we celebrate is the great day when the final edits went to the printer. And anyone who has sweated over a manuscript can tell you that that seems pretty much appropriate. That's when you celebrate, when it goes to the printer. One might consider that when the Continental Congress declared independence in 1776, they were declaring themselves traitors to the king and empire. There were at least as many loyalists in the colonies as there were patriots, so that the patriots were asserting control over a territory that they would have to seize from the loyalists. One ought to keep in mind that the American Revolution was a civil war in the colonies. And in this light, the patriots' enthusiasm and faith in the future is absolutely remarkable. John Adams is certain of victory and of a glorious future. He's certain of from one end of the continent to the other. Those were the days, my friends, when not only we had a future, but one could imagine that it was going to be glorious. Well, my friends, it's been another week of very bad news here in northern Michigan, with the air quality ranging from bad to absolutely dangerous. It's cleared up today, but the air quality index has been all over the map. The air quality index goes from green to yellow to red to purple, and on Tuesday we were all in the purple. We were warned. Our AQI, our index stood at 239, which we were warned would have immediate effects on sensitive groups. And certainly Karen and I both we could sense right away. It triggered an inflammatory response throughout our bodies. And speaking of arthritis, as you can see, I'm wearing a trigger finger brace. Actually, last week I went to orthopedic urgent care, and I was prescribed this brace and a step-down course of steroids. So you're seeing like the Mehler on steroids, in case you didn't notice. And it certainly was helpful through this crisis, but I could still feel it. The arthritis is part of natural aging process. My fingers are coming to resemble my mother's fingers at my age. It's my own DNA implementing its shutdown proceedings. No one escapes entropy, and at 76, I'm experiencing very typical manifestations of aging. So Karen and I have devised a new strategy to cope with the new situation. We check to see where the air is best in Michigan, and then head out. So yesterday on Shabbos, we drove an hour and a half to Midland because the air in Midland was far better than it was anywhere else in the state. The smoke is coming from the Canadian wildfires, and the wildfires are increasing globally as a part of the feedback system driving climate change. The fires in Canada are out of control, and every time the wind blows in our direction, it will become increasingly difficult for us to breathe. Here is how the New Yorker summarized or discuss our situation in a piece that was published this week called Hazy Days. Quote, "There is nothing more fundamental to life than respiration, and an awareness that the air around you isn't fit to breathe can certainly be alarming. It is also likely to become more common. Summer is only beginning, but Canada's fire season is already one of the worst in its history. 15 times as much Canadian land has burned relative to this time last year, 11 million acres, or an area twice the size of New Jersey. And firefighters in Quebec's boreal forests have called the fires unstoppable." Let me comment that this is what we mean by exponential growth. The fires are 15 times as large as they were the year before. Next year, if they're 15 times larger than they are this year, you get an idea of what exponential means. When it comes to our health, wildfire smoke, is back to the article, when it comes to our health, wildfire smoke may be the most injurious form of air pollution. According to one study, it can be 10 times as toxic as other forms of pollution, including car exhausts. Wildfires release enormous amounts of fine particulate matter, and these particles travel long distances and are readily inhaled into the lungs. And there they can slip into the bloodstream, lodge in organs, and enter the brain. Their effects may be especially damaging to children whose bodies are rapidly developing and whose immune defenses have not yet matured. And I would comment that it's also for all of the flora and fauna, all of the animals outside, they can't escape it at all. There still is much to learn about the hazards of wildfire smoke, but research on air pollution more generally paints a morbid picture. When the air quality is poor, studies have shown crime goes up, test scores go down, umpires make bad calls, investors make mistakes. Exposure to air pollution has been linked to asthma, emphysema, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, stroke, depression, suicide, miscarriages, premature births, and infant mortality. To protect our health, admonitions to stay indoors won't be enough. For one thing, not everyone can, and for another, the air quality indoors is little better than it is outdoors. But air purifiers do appear to work strikingly well. After a gas leak appeared in Los Angeles, the school district installed air filters in classrooms, and students' math and English scores shot up. The magnitude roughly on par with cutting the class size by a third. Meanwhile, for those venturing outside, N95 masks have proven to be somewhat effective, seem to offer meaningful protection. In one laboratory study, they reduced exposure to wildfire smoke by a factor of 16. So wear your mask. Many of Canada's wildfires were ignited by lightning, but in the United States, some 80% are thought to be caused not by acts of God, but by the recklessness of humans. Good health has, in some sense, always been a fight with nature. For much of our history, that battle has been waged against microbes, mutations, and the ravages of old age. Increasingly, however, we find ourselves contending with the planet itself, a consequence of the damages that we have inflicted upon it. For many of us, the danger has long seemed remote, theoretical, abstract. Now, simply breathing makes it hard to ignore. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week. I wish you all a good week. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll be back next week for another edition of More Bad News.